I think it is, and in a way I do think, I have to say, if you do eat meat, I think you have a responsibility to know something about it, because you surely don't want to support something which, may be not only just sort of wrong slightly, but, causing really serious and prolonged suffering to beings who, you agree, can't morally. So I don't think we can just sort of turn our heads and say, please don't tell me about it. That's too much like the good Germans who, didn't want to know what was happening to those Jews who were being...
Yes, you're a much more moral person than I am, and I have to say that.
For me, what living ethically is about is about not just thinking about yourself, but putting yourself in the position of other beings who are affected by your action. So this is the kind of sort of golden rule, as it is sometimes called, of putting yourself in the position of others and asking what it would be like. And of course, Christians will say, well, that comes from Jesus, and Jews will say that also comes from the Bible. But in fact, it's something that's you find in any ethic. You find it in Confucius, you find it in early Hindu writings. So I think it's something that any tradition of ethical thinking that gets developed to a certain point, that starts to take, if you like, a broader perspective, sometimes you could call it, a point of view of the universe, will start to realize that, well, I'm just one being here among a lot of others, and there's nothing so special about me that somehow my sufferings are more important than your sufferings or anyone else's suffering, of the people out there, or for that matter, of the animals. So we get to the point where we say, really to live ethically, you have to try and think what it's like for those others who are affected by your action. And, if you say, well, why care? Of course, it's possible not to care, but then you're just cutting yourself off from a part of reality, which is there. You're denying that it matters when, when you look at it as objectively as you can, it's obvious that it matters to them as it matters to you.
Which leaves me in a very difficult moral position. I mean, I clearly, I think you have a very, very strong point when you say that anybody who eats meat has a very, very strong obligation to think seriously about it. And I don't find any very good defense. I find myself in exactly the same position as you or I would have been, well, probably you wouldn't have been, but I might have been 200 years ago, talking about, 200 years, perhaps a bit longer ago than that, talking about slavery, where somebody like Thomas Jefferson, a man of very sound ethical principles, kept slaves. It was just what one did. I mean, it was the kind of the societal norm. The historical precedent of slavery, I think, is actually rather a good one, because there was a time when it was simply the norm. Everybody did it. Some people did it with gusto and relish. Other people, like Jefferson, did it reluctantly. I would have probably done it reluctantly, and I'd sort of just gone along with what society does. But I think it's extremely hard. It was hard to defend then, yet everybody did it. And that's the sort of position I find myself in now. And I think what I'd really like to see is people like you having a far greater effect upon, I would call it consciousness raising, really, having and try to swing it round so that it becomes the societal norm not to eat meat.
Yes, absolutely, and I think what you're talking about is the pressure of social conformity, and I think we're very much a conforming animal, and it's very hard to do things sometimes against the prevailing norms, and that's why it was hard for people who had some scruples or doubts about slavery to actually imagine that they could abolish it and live without. So I think that's, we are making it more acceptable. I think in a way the animal movement is making progress. I mean, you can walk into any supermarket here and you'll find meat substitutes, meat alternatives, vegetarian dishes. You'll find soy milk, of course, and so on. So it's getting easier and it's getting more socially acceptable. And I think we just have to somehow get past that threshold where it won't be a difficult decision for people to make at all. It'll simply be something that they can see lots of people do, and they'll feel better doing it, and gradually it will become a thing of the past, as slavery has now become a thing of the past.